What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? First of all, I want to thank all of you who sent me birthday wishes yesterday. Thank you very much. Very nice to receive your birthday wishes. All right, so what's going on in the market today? Hey, I want to talk about oil. Oil today, WTI on the NYMEX breaking down below its 200-day moving average. Of course, this was a short position we had on from MMT Trader. I got mocked for that. And none other than Methinks. Remember Methinks, who kept writing to me and emailing me about Methinks' unrelenting bull market. Methinks was also sending me emails about how I was so wrong on my short call in oil. Well, here we are making money on that position again. What can I tell you, folks? But all kidding aside, let's go over the breakdown here. And the reason why I had been calling for lower oil was not just because of oil inventories, but we actually have seen, and we saw very, very big, significant drawdowns in gasoline inventories and distillate inventories, which, held those markets up. But I stayed short, and here's the reason why. Gasoline demand still weak year over year. We are still negative. Gasoline demand, it started to come back a little bit, but it was always negative versus last year, and then it started to deteriorate again. Now, I saw in the past 4 or 5 weeks refiner inputs, and the inputs are refiners buying the crude and inputting it into their refineries to pump out product. So that was going up and up and up. That was holding up crude prices, but yet gasoline demand kept falling. All right, so they were buying crude, they were refining it into products, and I knew with gasoline demand falling and with production up, you're going to start to get builds again in gasoline. Eventually, you're going to start to get builds. I predicted builds in gasoline, builds in distillates, and that's exactly what happened. We saw a big build in gasoline inventories. That's just the start. Let me tell you, right now, refiner inputs are at the highest level in history. Never been higher. 17.3 million barrels a day of crude putting in. They're sucking up the crude. They're putting it into their refineries, pumping out product for weakening demand. And that's why you see now product leading the market down. You got gasoline down 3% today. It was down yesterday. So, once the refiners start to see another week or two of build in product inventories, they're going to stop putting all that crude into their refineries, and that's when the bottom is really going to fall out from crude. All right. At some point, it's probably going to be a buy. And again, don't forget, we got a very big speculative long position in this market. It's going to be liquidated. At least a good portion of that is going to be liquidated. So I was 100% right on that crude call. As far as stocks go, we're still in that situation here of a kind of, euphoric rally. We saw the Trump big tax cut, big tax cut, biggest in history. Frankly, I don't know what to make of it. Taking 7 tax brackets down to 3, 10%, 25%, 35%. I do like the doubling of the standard deduction. That's going to help people, all right? So that's, I guess, somewhat significant. But the point is, this whole thing has to be passed. It has to go through Congress. It has to be passed. That's not going to happen for a long time. And you're already hearing a lot of people voice concern about, what it's going to do to the deficit, which is ridiculous. And on that note, I want to talk a little bit about that. It's very, very frustrating to continue to hear people so misinformed talking about the deficit. A very well-known market commentator, I'll just say, it was Jim Cramer the other day on the Today Show, big morning news show, talking about, the tax plan and how, and he was asked, well, isn't this going to be a problem with the deficit? And he said, hey, I got kids, I have grandkids, I'm always worried about that. That is a very, very unfortunate and misinformed comment. The deficit equals the surplus of the non-government. Whatever the government spends in excess of what it takes away from us in taxes is money that we receive. It is part of our wealth. There is no, big thing passed along to our kids and grandkids. Okay, the World War II generation ran up the biggest deficits in history as a percentage of GDP, and it didn't bankrupt us. It didn't destroy us. It was part of the wealth. It still is part of the wealth and savings that the progeny, the generations that came after, is what we're living on. All right. So to say, hey, this is going to be this big burden passed along to my kids and my grandkids, and I'm so worried. That's a very, very misinformed and a disappointing comment, I have to say, from a guy who's widely followed like that. I mean, what the government spends in excess of what it takes away from us in taxes is what we own, not what we owe. Okay? If the government spends $1 billion and it takes away $900 million in taxes, we, the non-government, are left with $100 million in the aggregate. All right, so it has been an addition to our financial wealth, all else equal. So the people who keep saying it's this burden passed along to our kids and our grandkids, that is so utterly wrong. It is so ignorant. It is so misleading. It is just wrong. It is wrong. Think about it. Whatever the government spends in excess of what it takes away from us, that is our surplus. That goes in our pockets. That becomes part of our wealth, financial wealth. And there's no other way to see it. That's what it is. That is exactly what it is. So all the fear-mongering. But you're never going to get over that. You're never going to get around that. People will continue to falsely conflate the government with a household. Households are not currency issuers. The federal government of the United States is completely different category there, completely different distinction. And if you do not make that distinction, if you do not understand that distinction, then you fundamentally misunderstand the monetary system. And that is basically broadly the way people view it. And that's how come, we have slow economic growth. We can't repair our infrastructure. We can't take care of health care. All the things that we need to do, the very, very important investments in our society, in our economy, in our society, for our well-being, for the future generations. We can't. We don't do it because we are constrained and paralyzed by this false thinking. So, unfortunate, to say the least. See everybody later. Bye-bye.